From now on, we'd like to begin Prime Minister Kishida's speech. So first of all, there will be remarks from Prime Minister. First of all, ahead of the press conference on the 23rd of this month of Shiretoko, Hokkaido, there was an accident which occurred to the tourist boat. And for the people who passed away, I'd like to sincerely extend my condolences and share my sympathy with the family members of those victims. Still, 15 people are still unaccounted for. So the Japanese government will continue across different agencies and different ministries with all-out efforts. We will address rescue and search activities. And for the operator who had an accident this time, there will be a special audit. And since yesterday, across the nation, transportation builders have been conducting the measures for the emergency safety checkups for tourist boat operators to ensure safety and security. Just before this meeting, comprehensive emergency countermeasures for oil and goods price surge was decided. And today, around these countermeasures, under the current situation, how we run the economy will be talked about. COVID-19 pandemic is inflicting the national lives and economic activities, and with Russia aggression in Ukraine, and because of the ramification across the globe, we have a lot of uncertainties, and crude oils and cereal prices at global markets are rising, and some fisheries products and some raw materials stable supply has been hampered. This is inflicting the people's lives. Last month, I listened to the people in Toyosu, food industry people. And this month, I also visited Niigata Prefecture, Tsubame Sanjo. I listened to the voices of SMEs in the manufacturing industry in Ishikawa. I also met with farmers and housewives. Everyone was suffering from the inflation of crude oils and food items. However, they tried to work all-out efforts to address the situation. With inflation of prices of goods and oil, this will hamper the recovery. This shouldn't hamper the recovery of socio-economic activities from the COVID pandemic. And so far, up until November last year, we had our economic countermeasures to counter surging energy prices. In March, we also compiled the emergency countermeasures for rising oil prices to take swift actions. On the other hand, we have Ukrainian affairs, and given that, we also have rising prices for crude oils, raw materials, and cereals, and we also have unpredictable situation around unstable logistic situation. So from mid to long-term perspectives, we'd like to take measures ahead of the curve. This is pretty much needed. So under such a concept, I will run the economy and finance or fiscal aspects with all-out measures in two phases. In phase one, there was a decision today about the comprehensive emergency countermeasures with a business size of 13 trillion yen. With the Ukrainian affairs, we have rising oil prices and goods prices, and there is a ramification on economic activities and national lives, so we have to swiftly take actions. And from COVID-19, we have to assure the recovery for the economic and social activities. So by the end of this month, general contingency funds and COVID reserve funds use was decided in the cabinet, will be decided in the cabinet. As you can see in the paper circulated, we will provide different measures. As phase two, by June, under the new form of capitalism, vision and execution plan and fiscal economic policies 2022 will be compiled. This summer, there will be upper house election, and then afterwards, in order to move ahead with these measures, comprehensive measures will be broken down into more specifics, including the energy aspect. Social and economic structural change has to be led by Japan. On top, up until phase 2, resurgence of COVID and protracted situation of Ukrainian affairs. With this, further crude oil and goods price inflation possibilities are there. So the situation is very unpredictable. And given this situation, unpredictable fiscal demand has to be swiftly responded to ensure safety of people. So therefore, as part of these comprehensive emergency measures, 5 trillion yen will be ensured, earmarked for COVID-19 and crude oil prices and inflation-related reserve funds. And with measures for alleviating drastic changes of fuel prices, and with this pillar, the supplementary budget will be submitted and passed during that session so that whatever happens, we can protect the national lives and livelihoods. So now, let me elaborate a little more on today's decision, which is comprehensive economic package or countermeasures. We have 4 pillars for the countermeasures. The first pillar is how to respond to surging oil prices. As for the countermeasures for fuel prices, up until the end of April, per liter, 25 yen was subsidized so that we can contain or cap the regular gasoline prices at 172 yen or so. And this time, with 3 parties, there was a conclusion of the review team, and given that, in order to bolster the alleviating measures that took place so far, for 5 months, around 1.5 trillion yen subsidy system will be in place. With the new system, the base price is going to be pushed down to around 168 yen for the time being in order to further respond to further inflation of fuel prices. The cap of the subsidies will be up to 35 yen, and by doing so, even when gasoline prices hit the 200 yen mark, then the price of the gas stations in the market will be contained within the range or a level of 168 yen. And if the international crude oil market price, for example, per barrel, if it hits a $150 mark, which is unprecedented, and beyond 35 yen if subsidies are required, we will cover 50% of the surge of the price so that we can cap the domestic price surge. And the types of the oil will be gasoline, light oil, heavy oil, and kerosene. On top, aircraft fuel will be in scope, and taxi LP gas will be also supported as well. On top, transportation, agriculture, forestries, fisheries, and health industry operators, and the people who are infected a lot will be also supported as well.
第2の
The second pillar, energy, raw materials, food, and so on. These have to be stably supplied, and we need to take actions. Energy-saving housing support, energy-saving clean energy have to be further utilized. As much as possible, we should not depend on imported resources, and we need to convert our energy structure. In case the situation prolongs, we depend a lot on Russia and Ukraine on the import of semiconductor raw materials and palladium and other industrial raw materials. The procurement will be diversified. Oil producing countries must produce more crude oil. Energy procurement should be diversified, as well as energy sources. Renewable energies must be introduced to the maximum net level, and nuclear power should also be capitalized on. Energy market needs to be stabilized, and a low-cost, stable energy supply is crucial to be secured. We will work with relevant countries, and we will cover all the bases to do that. Food and others, price hike is an important issue for households. Import wheat, the government purchases that, and the government sells to domestic milling companies. With the Ukrainian situation, the international price has increased by more than 10% recently. Up until September, the government sales price will maintain at the level before the inflation. At the same time, we will also support the shift from import wheat to Japan-made rice and rice flour and wheat. On agriculture, fertilizer, raw materials need to be stably procured. We will support that, and compound feed safety net fund will be increased. Through those measures, we are going to mitigate the impact on management due to import price hike. On fisheries, seafood processing industry, crab, sea urchin, salmon, roe, and other Russian seafood or marine products, these need to be replaced. In terms of the raw materials, we will support that. And due to the fishery agreement with Russia, there is heightening uncertainty in fishery activities. So we will extend support for relevant fishery operators in an agile manner. On wood materials, part of the import from Russia has been banned. So we will promote utilization of domestic wood. The third pillar is support for SMEs. On a continuous manner, energy cost, raw materials, labor cost, the part of the increase should be properly passed through to prices. So we need to optimize the transactions. Public procurement and subsidies will be utilized to be used for preferential treatment to promote wage hike. And government financial institution will provide a safety net loan. The interest rate will be further lowered, and interest-free unsecured loan will be prolonged to the end of September so that we can fund the companies. And we will also set a special quota in the business reconstruction subsidy scheme. As we are now facing crude oil price and inflation, we are going to support companies who are going to challenge new businesses. The fourth pillar, under COVID-19 pandemic, we are facing price hike or inflation. We need to support people who are facing financial difficulties. Emergency small lot loan and other types of special loans, the application window for people facing financial difficulties will be prolonged, and for households who are rearing kids and with low income, we will extend 50,000 yen of grants per child to booster the safety net to protect people's livelihood. As the impact of COVID-19 is prolonging, there are people who are suffering from isolation and loneliness. Through NPO and other activities, we will provide fine-grained support. And we will also expand boldly the regional revitalization extraordinary grant. We are going to newly set up a 1 trillion yen quota for crude oil and price hike and inflation. In addition to the support extended by the country at local municipalities, depending on the situation in each region, the support for hard-up people, for agriculture, fisheries, and forestry operators and SME operators with the price hike in electricity and the gas bill, we are going to alleviate the burden of the public and operators. And the school meal fee, that burden should also be alleviated. And we're going to support the decisions made by municipalities and education boards. Lastly, the Golden Week is coming around the corner, and we have some favor to ask from the people to take precautions against the COVID-19. Thanks to people's support, for the first time in the 3 years, we are going to have a Golden Week without the priority measures to prevent the spread of COVID and a state of emergency. However, we cannot be complacent. We need to prevent resurgence. And in a gradual manner, we are going to recover the socio-economic activities. In order to achieve that, there are 3 things that I'd like to ask people to do. Number 1, vaccination. Even for people who are busy at work and are going to school, please utilize this long weekend to have vaccination. The third vaccination is effective against infection and can prevent developing serious symptoms. In order to protect yourself and your loved ones, please vaccinate. Number 2, active testing. For people who are going to go back town, before you do that, please do the third vaccination or get a test. You can go to a testing site where you can get the test for free, and also during the weekend there will be free testing sites to be set up temporarily at stations and airports and other locations. Number 3, basic anti-infectious measures. So again, we'd like to ask people to wear masks, disinfect your fingers, hands, ventilate, and avoid the 3 C's. These measures should be thoroughly implemented. We are still in the transition period to the normal time. We need to be on the highest alert to recover our socio-economic activities. I'd like to continue to ask for the understanding and the support from the Japanese citizens.
From now on, we'd like to take questions from the floor. Those who are nominated, please come to the stand microphone in front and state your name and affiliation, and 1 question for each organization, please, or each person, please. Nikkei, Akiyama-san, please. Nikkei newspaper, my name is Akiyama. About the comprehensive emergency measures, this time supplementary budget will be compiled, and as for the reserves or contingency funds, there will be a building up or bolstering. However, there will be less oversight in the diet for contingency funds, so therefore it requires some precaution, according to some people say, and if it is not earmarked for specific purposes in the autumn diet session, there has to be a clarification of the purposes, and then there should be a submittal, according to some people say. So I understand this is a ruling coalition's view or the conclusion. However, how do you see the need of building up the reserve fund or contingency fund? Like I have said before, for economic and fiscal operations, we consider it in 2 phases, so that we can take perfect measures. So that means as phase 1, as comprehensive economic or emergency package, we will carry it out by the end of this month so that we can swiftly take actions for rising prices, including oil prices. And in phase 2, under the new capitalism vision and execution plan, and the fiscal economic policies will be crystallized, and then after the upper house election in the summer, comprehensive measures will be more specific. On the other hand, even up until the summertime, COVID situation has to be monitored, and we have to also look at Ukrainian affairs. We have possibilities of resurgence of the COVID, and protracted situation around Ukraine. So the situation is pretty much unpredictable. So therefore, as part of the supplementary budget, we have uncertainties right now. So therefore, fuel prices alleviation measure from June to September, there will be a recognition of these spends. And with a further deterioration of the situation, whatever the situation is, we have to take swift measures. In order to make it happen, we will earmark or set aside the reserves. So therefore, the supplementary budget and contingency or reserve funds, so these are needed for protection of national lives. And you said less supervision or oversight in the last session. However, these reserve and contingency funds for COVID-19 and oil prices and inflation countermeasures, we have a limitation of the purposes and the use of the funds. So therefore, regarding such a way of thinking, we will raise it to the last session with cordial explanations. That's all for me.
Shinohara-san.
TV Tokyo, Shinohara-san, over to you. Thank you. My question is on diplomacy. The President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol, his delegation for policy consultation is visiting Japan, and that shows that South Korea is putting importance on Japan-South Korea relations, according to some people. And for you, do you think, what do you make of the current situation? And in order to improve the bilateral relations, what kind of actions are required from the South Korean side? Today, with the policy consultation delegation of South Korea, I met with them. During the meeting, I talked about the rule-based international order that is under attack right now, given the current international situation. Japan, South Korea, and Japan, South Korea, the US, these strategic alliances are most needed now. The recovery, the improvement of Japan-South Korea relations cannot be waited. And since 1965, the diplomatic ties were normalized between the two countries, and the friendly cooperative relations are the foundations, and the relations have to be boosted and developed. To do that, the former Korean civilian workers of South Korea issue has to be solved, and that's what I said. And my counterpart said that they put importance on the bilateral relations, and that they'd like to work with us to improve the bilateral relations. This is something between countries, and keeping the words between countries is the basic for relations between countries. And including our communication with the members of the delegation, the stance of the next of the administration will be observed. And in order to create a healthy relations, and based on our consistent stance, including President-elect Yoon, we are going to have close communication with the new administration. That's my thought.
From now on, we'd like to take questions from other media outlets other than lead media organizations. So we will nominate the person who can ask a question. Fuji TV, please come to the fore. Fuji TV, Sejima. About the Shiretoko and tourist boat accident, including Golden Week, we will have a tourist season, and in order to prevent the reoccurrence of similar incidents, what kind of measures do you consider? And testing, inspection, bolstering, do you think such a need is there on top of what we have done so far? In the beginning, I mentioned this matter. The other day, there was an occurrence of the accident to the terrorist boat, and relevant organizations are working with all-out efforts for search and rescue activities. And the special audit has been conducted for the operator in question to see the execution of the necessary activities, and as for preventive measures, post-accident, to all the operators for boats, safety has to be ensured. Such instruction was delivered, and across the nation, we have a transportation bureaus, and the emergency testing and inspection has been conducted for safety. So we are taking such actions, and given what happened this time for this accident, thorough safety measures on this front. Of course, we have to think about it as well. So therefore, today, vis-a-vis MLIT, Transportation Ministry, including legal framework and regulations, how safety measures should be, verification or review meeting or council was set up, so that should be set up so that we can have thorough safety measures. There was such an instruction given. So such review council opinions will be heeded, and for the future safety measures, we'd like to think about the plan.
では次の方、読売新聞、
Miyai-san from Yomiuri newspaper, please. You talked about a two-phase approach. My question is about that. After the upper house election, the new form of capitalism, you're going to make concrete plans, and the funding for that, are you going to formulate a new supplementary budget, and are you going to put that forward to the Diet after the election? As I said before, up until June, the vision and the plan for the new form of capitalism will be shown, and the 2022 fiscal economic framework will be put together. That's our goal. And after putting them together, after the upper house election, a comprehensive policy or measure, the content will be specified. And I don't want to get ahead of that, but in order to achieve a new form of capitalism, we need to take various policies, and we need to enforce those. In energy areas, we want to achieve carbon neutrality in 2050. So we have to also address the change in the socio-economic structure. And we need to demonstrate our direction. So you asked about if we are going to put together a supplementary budget. So first we will show our policies, our directions, and then we will think about how to finance them. So we would like to have thorough discussion and thinking. First, we need to show something concrete and to gain understanding from the public. That's critical.
The next person, NHK, Hasegawa-san, please. NHK Hasegawa. Prime Minister, during the Golden Week, Southeast Asia and Europe will be visited by you. What is the current status of coordination? And Quad, in June, G7 summit will be held in Germany. What kind of diplomacy would you like to have going forward? First, this time Russia's aggression in Ukraine is unilateral attempt to change the status quo by force, not only for Europe but also in Asia. The international order will be undermined. So such attempt, especially for East Asia and Indo-Pacific, this should never be tolerated. So given such a concept, summit level diplomacy will be held. The Quad summit meeting and Mr. Biden's visit to Japan. Regarding such schedule, currently, towards execution, coordination is underway. And in June, late part of it, in Germany, G7 summit will be held. Through such occasions, or using such occasions, for peace and order, in order to protect these two fronts, summit and leader-to-leader interactions will be strategically executed. For the Western countries around G7, we would like to have a solid collaboration. We need to affirm it. And as for Asian countries, we will continue to make sure that the international order, because the way that the international order is questioned, such a question will be raised in a thorough manner, so that the international solidarity, its importance will be reiterated for even better understanding. So we'd like to lead the international opinions in this regard.
産経新聞田村さん。
Tamura-san from Sankei newspaper, please. Tamura from Sankei newspaper, thank you. My question is about defense capability and defense budget. So in Germany, it's going to boost its defense budget to 2% of GDP, and LDP also proposed to raise the defense budget to 2% of GDP in 5 years. So about the defense budget, do you have the same idea of setting the goal at 2%? And to be specific, how are you going to boost Japan's defense capability going forward? With Russian aggression in Ukraine, including Germany, there are many countries that are taking actions. And in Japan, within LDP, the new national security strategy, the discussion is taking place. So this new national security strategy needs to be formed. And as we work on that, we are not going to rule out any options, and we are going to look into them thoroughly, and we have to thoroughly enhance Japan's defense capability. First and foremost, we need to protect the people's lives and livelihood. What do we have to do? We need to have specific and realistic discussions. And we need to have many and thorough discussions. As a result of that, we also have to secure budget to support our ideas. So that's the order of doing things in securing the budget for what we want to do. What is necessary to protect the lives and the livelihood of the people? We need to have specific and realistic discussions. That's crucial. After we do that, we need to secure the budget to support the ideas. So that's what the government is going to do.
The next person, Tribune News, Sushiro-san. Tribune News, Sushiro from Indonesia. Thank you. During the Golden Week, as part of that, Prime Minister will be visiting different kinds of countries in the Southeast Asia, including Indonesia, And for Indonesia visit, what do you think will be on the agenda for more specifics, please? Like you have said before, if all the situations allow, then during the Golden Week, I'd like to visit Indonesia and other Southeast Asian countries, as well as European nations. As for Indonesia, first of all, this year, in G20, there will be hosting by Indonesia, and next year, ASEAN will be also hosted by Indonesia ASEAN meeting. So President Joko of Indonesia about Ukrainian affairs, we'd like to have candid opinion exchange so that we can reaffirm the collaboration between the two nations. And during this visit, a free and open Indo-Pacific should be realized. So we will reaffirm cooperation and Asia's decarbonization and other economic issues, and bilateral cooperation should be further accelerated, and that's my hope. At any rate, these are the things that I have in mind, and coordination is underway for the timeline.
それでは大変恐縮ですが、日程の関係であと2問と。
Due to the time constraint, we are going to take 2 more questions. So Wilfie-san from Japan Times, please. My question is about evacuees from Ukraine, and it's been almost 2 months since that started. So in the mid to long term, there will be more people to stay longer in Japan for about that length of period. So what kind of support do you think is necessary to support in the mid to long term? So if the situation in Ukraine protracts and the evacuees from Ukraine are going to stay longer in Japan, that's a possibility. So from a mid to long-term point of view, we need to extend support according to the needs of Ukrainian evacuees, including hello work. We are going to support job seeking, and also for children to go to school, and a temporary housing, and the Japanese language training will be conducted. So that kind of support needs to be delivered to the evacuees. And consultation centers. To consultation center, we send letters in Japanese, English, and Ukrainian. And we've also got email addresses to deliver information that is useful for daily livelihood. That's what we've been doing, and we will continue to do that. And municipalities who are accepting the evacuees, we also conducted some seminars. We will continue to listen to what Ukrainian evacuees need so that we can stand by them and provide appropriate support.
それでは
朝日ニュースペーパー池尻さん。Thank you. About depreciation of the yen, the Bank of Japan is sticking to low interest rate. However, around the world, different movements are there. So how do you see this, and how do you see the BOJ's monetary policy in this regard? About the weaker yen, and regarding the price level, making specific comments, it's something that I should refrain from my position as Prime Minister. At least for the weaker yen, the sharp fluctuation of foreign currencies, or the forex, it's not very desirable for the market, I guess. And for this front, monetary interest and other measures and will be divided and are being debated, and about the currency level, the economic countermeasures and monetary measures, and this is really the result of all these measures. And within the BOJ, 2% inflation target is there, and under which measures are being exercised. And for such measures, on a continuous basis, efforts should be continued. So that's the hope or the expectation of the Japanese government. However, regarding the currency rate and the level with specifics, I'd like to refrain from commenting on details. Okay, so this concludes today's press conference. Thank you very much for your cooperation.